All right, yeah, we're gonna do this next. It's a divorce video. This is from Soft White Underbelly. We've reacted to them a couple times. I enjoy their channel. They tend to have very interesting people on with very interesting conversations. And this kind of is a little bit relevant. It's just some of the stuff that we talk about, you know, in the manosphere, I guess. It's a divorce attorney's thoughts on love and marriage. James, I can't say his last name. It sounds like a bad word. But I'm curious about it. I really want to know what a divorce attorney's perspective is. I mean, he's probably, you know, beaten down, and I can imagine, like, he's got to hate the concept of marriage at this point. I mean, you know, my mother used to work for White Castle, and when she would smell the hamburgers there, she'd get sick because that's all she's around. So I imagine that, you know, if all you're around are bad marriages, you probably start to hate marriage in some capacity. So, but let's
time after my divorce. I had a period of time after my divorce where I was
obviously he got divorced too.
Really ambitious when it came to women, but then it felt like a job. Like it felt like a job after a while, where I was like, God, it's like enough. It's kind of enough, you know.
Isn't it the job though? Like being in a relationship is supposed to be partially. It is like you have to put work in at least. I don't know if I call it a job, but
like it's like when you've eaten so much that you just go like, ugh. I got that way with pussy. Like it really was.
That never happened to me.
Like I just had enough. Like it was fine. I was like, this is great, but
well, when you're in your 20s or 30s, maybe.
Yeah.
Your libido is strong. No, it makes you insane.
Yeah, I was not. I definitely.
I gotta turn myself
up.
Vanilla, I think.
Yeah, which I think is great. Although I have to tell you, one of the most depressing divorces I ever did was a guy who was, I think, 92.
Oh, wow.
Geez.
And
wow, at that point, I just ride it out. Okay.
What made it depressing is that he had left his wife of, I don't know, 50-something, 60-something years.
Why?
For a younger woman, a woman in her 50s.
What an idiot.
And I just remember what was sad about it to me was this guy is still being led around by his dick. Like I thought, oh my God, like I'm gonna be chained to an idiot forever. Like I'm gonna forever be led around by my dick. And I remember thinking like, no, I really thought that at like 90-something, I would just, like a beautiful woman would walk
by.
At
90-something, I would just be like, don't care anymore. What
Latchkey
do you got, like a year?
Super
You got 1 year left?
If you see nothing but struggling relationships around you, you do tend to run as fast as you can.
Yeah, it makes
Guilty.
sense. Yeah, it makes sense. I feel bad for divorce attorneys who probably struggle to have like decent relationships. Damn. Okay.
And I go, oh, there's a human being. Like there would be no.
You can appreciate it without.
Yeah, there would just be no sense of like, yeah, you know, that would be gone from me. And this guy's proof that 90-something years old and you're still thinking with your dick. Like that terrified me. It really did. It actually upset me because I thought at some point I'd get to experience what it's like to just be free.
Well, you might. You know, you just don't take the Viagra. In my opinion, that's all you got to do, brother, and you're set for life. Don't take the Viagra, you silly goose.
In New York, where there's a financial industry, there's all kinds of industries here.
Oh yeah.
But to me, sometimes I wonder if female attractiveness isn't the highest valued commodity in our
100% it is. 100%.
It is.
Yeah, of course.
Because men are becoming rich and powerful in order to get a woman.
Of course.
The woman they want.
Of course.
I mean, I understand that, you know, men want attractive women and all that, but like, you know, I think that there's also an issue with the framing. It's not just about looks. There's a lot of other factors as well. Looks are obviously very important, but, you know, maybe focus on a personality and maybe you won't be taken advantage of so much. If the only thing that you're doing in your life is looking for like a woman based on purely her looks and not any other aspect of her, then you're not going to learn to find a woman that you're emotionally compatible with because that's not a priority to you. You're not practicing that. You practice anything that you practice with, you get better at. So if you're not practicing trying to talk to women that, you know, are like emotionally in tune with you in some capacity, you're just not going to get there. You're going to be miserable forever.
What an attractive woman. And when I say attractive, I don't just mean attractive, I mean even just sexually confident. I mean, what an unbelievably lucrative career that is. Like I do divorces for people that, you know, a woman walks out with $200-300 million. He was an analyst at Goldman Sachs who built a hedge fund and then...
Oh, I don't care about that person. That's not the average person. He was a person who made a bunch of money and then married a fucking young person. Like, oh, wow. You're telling me that relationship didn't work out? I don't care.
Sold it and then used his trading algorithm to build it up to $500 million. Okay. She was hot. And slept with him for a while and then stopped.
And then he's an idiot that married her. Like, I don't understand. Why would you prioritize that?
And started sleeping with other people and playing tennis and having Botox. And she's going to get half.
Oh,
like,
this is the problem.
Incredible. But you know what he had to do to get that? And what she had to, I'll fuck that guy for $200 million. Are you kidding me? Like, that's insane. That's incredible. Like, and God bless. I mean, I'm not saying that this is the rules of the game, you know, but you can't argue that that's not easier than going to Harvard.
No, for sure. But then the payoff, the trade-off for that is that when they hit a certain age, the value
Play
decreases.
it right. Any stock, if you hold it too long, it's going to go down. Like, so play the stock the right way. I mean, and that's what I think. If we were a little more honest about the nature of male-female coupling, I mean, right now we can't even establish what is gender. We can't establish any of that anymore. So
we can, but I'm not going to get into
so
this.
divorce has become incredibly hilarious and fraught.
Well, to me, what is, like, sometimes you have to stand back and look at things to get the real perspective on what it is.
Sure.
And sometimes you look back at marriage. So when was it invented? Like 2000 BC, roughly. And the life expectancy of humans back then was 18 years old.
Yeah.
And marriage was created.
Was it? Life in 2000 BC. Oh, look, it's an easy look up. Yeah, it was 18. Wow, that makes sense. Jesus. Huh?
For
yeah, I mean, like, marriage probably isn't necessarily the best concept for, like, everybody nowadays. I think that people in general are usually monogamous, but it's like serial monogamy. But I think it could still work for some people. Yeah, it's hard. Back in the day, we were also really fucking stupid, and people are much more intelligent now and have better, grips with it. Marriage might just not be for everybody.
Land ownership.
Or maybe you find your person, and as you get older, maybe in your 50s, you have a conversation about opening up the relationship in some capacity, But, yeah, I mean, you're also raising your kids much more robustly. You only have a certain amount of, like, emotional energy, we'll say. So if, like, you're raising your kids and whatnot, like, that's the rest of the room that you have for love, right? You only have so much room or so much energy for love. So after those kids are gone, maybe you guys go fuck around. I don't know.
And things like that.
Yeah.
And if you're going to die in your early 20s or whatever, then getting married at 16, 18 makes sense.
Well, I think there's a distinction that has to be made between
my wife suggested I really do think our marriage will last as long as we do. Yeah, I agree. It's going to, for sure.
Pair bonds and marriage, right? Marriage is a government concept. Marriage is a contract. Marriage is a legal status. Pair bonds, right? Two people go in it together, saying, hey, there's 7.3 billion people in the world, and the two of us, we're gonna lock up together and we're gonna try to hold hands.
I did a Jacob imprint, but not on a child like Jacob did. That was weird. On my wife.
And get through this thing.
Until we're 80 years old.
Well, until whatever, I mean, what's interesting is, first of all marriages end. They end in death or divorce, but they all end. Like every marriage ends. So
that's your best bet, man. Your worst thing is that you have a horrible divorce. Your best the best bet in a relationship is one of you die and then you're just fucking miserable until the other one's dead. You know what I mean? What a depressing thought.
It's one of the only things that you go, wow, I really hope this ends in us dying.
Damn.
Most things, that's not the desired outcome. But in marriage, you hope marriage will end in death.
I hope that it lasts beyond that in some capacity. That would be fucking cool. Let's hope there's something beyond that where my wife and I stay together, whether it's like actively or in some kind of like, just our soul bond. If that's a thing. Let's hope.
You hope that you will be together until one or both of you die. But all marriages end.
But
so
as a guy, as a provider, if you knew it was going to end and you were going to have to give away half your money, you might think twice about doing it.
Well, I think that's what makes being a divorce lawyer interesting, is that it's a lot of what a court has to do is disregard what happened in the marriage. Because the truth
is, this guy a divorce lawyer for the average guy, or it sounds like he's a divorce lawyer for like really rich people. So like, I don't really have any empathy for those people.
Is at the bottom of a bottomless pit. Like, you're never going to get there.
If you work like $300 million and you marry some fucking young bimbo and you get your money taken from you, like, what? You're an idiot. It's your fault.
Yeah, well, he's fucking his secretary. Right, because you were not sleeping with me anymore. I have a client whose wife acknowledges she didn't sleep with him for 6 years.
Okay.
What did you think was going on if you didn't sleep with him for 6 years? So
sure, yeah, okay.
Okay, delegate. You've delegated that responsibility. If you don't want to have sex with him, that's okay. No one should force you to have sex with this person.
I would just say get a divorce at that point. But
let him go have sex with someone else. You don't want to do the laundry, hire someone to do the laundry. If you don't want to mow your own lawn, hire someone to mow the lawn. Delegate that responsibility. And this guy wasn't even sleeping around. He was going to those hand job places, where you get a massage and you get the most pathetic thing in the world, the most innocuous thing.
Why pathetic?
Thing in the world. He didn't have a girlfriend. There was no love involved. He was getting
easy. But how much does it cost? Like, get a couple bucks, you're done. Nice and easy, baby. That's all I'm saying. Come on, bro. This is fucking ridiculous. Nice and easy. $20. $20. Easy peasy. I'm just kidding.
jacked off for $50. Like, that's sad. Like, I mean, first of all, hand jobs, like,
$50
that's
is
an outdated
fucking
technology. That's like a Betamax, you know? Like,
Yeah, you could buy like a fucking like a machine that'll do that for you now. You know what I mean? Hook it up to a VR headset. Probably a better investment. Where's our fucking team? Like,
who even does that anymore? But he was doing this, and he just thought, okay, that's fine. She had the indignation to say he shouldn't be a custodial parent. He's a terrible person because he's doing this. And it was like, wait, how is that much different than going to a strip club? How is that much more different? Because we just, he was like, well, should I deny it? And I was like, is it true? And he's like, well, yeah. I said, no, we should own it. Let's go in and say, yeah, you know what? Yeah, it's pathetic. It's really pathetic. My wife didn't sleep with me for 6 years, and I'm human. And I wanted to have sex still. I didn't want to blow up my life. I didn't want to screw up my kids and have my kids have divorced parents. So I thought, all right, she's clearly not interested in me anymore. I'm not going to have a girlfriend and get caught up in all the things where people could get hurt and there's feelings and fatal attraction and stuff. I'm just going to go. It'll be transactional, like going to a strip club or anything else. And is it a little pathetic that I'm a guy who makes $1 million a year in finance and I'm paying someone $50 to jack me off? Yeah, that's kind of pathetic. But you know what? I figured out. But to suggest that means I'm a bad parent.
it's an interesting angle to operate in when it comes to it. It's a very interesting angle. I mean, it's not a bad one. Like, yeah, I'm pathetic. I was horny and she wouldn't fuck me. That's something. I don't know how I'm supposed to do this. Okay.
It has nothing to do with my parenting at all, period. So, and thankfully the judge agreed with me on that one. But I really do think that the idea, I don't think, if you break it down fundamentally, 56% of marriages end in divorce. Like, think about, that's the ones that end in divorce. So how many people, what percentage stay together for the kids?
I don't know.
Or because they don't want to give away half their shit. Another 10%? That's conservative.
Conservative.
I mean, I think it depends. For one, people do stay together for the kids. Yeah, absolutely. But then when it comes to not giving away half your shit, that just depends on the kind of relationship you have and who's working and who's not working. It's going to happen regardless, because usually women make less money than men, usually has more financial power. But that's not always like that, right? So.
But let's say 20% then, okay?
That's at least right.
You now have a technology that fails 76% of the time. That's insane. That's insane. That's more likely than not.
Yeah, don't get
76%.
married.
If I told you there's a 76% chance when you walk out the door today you're going to get hit in the head with a bowling ball, you would not go out, or you'd wear a helmet for sure. But
it would be like 76% chance that you're going to get hit in the head with a bowling ball like 20 or 30, 40 years later. So sure.
People just continue to get married. Not only do they continue to get married, there's a presumption that you should get married. And if you don't get married, there's something wrong with you. So if you've got a girlfriend and you've been with her for 5 years, and you say to someone, we're getting married, they go, oh, that's great. They don't go, why? You're happy. Why would you get married? Like, everything's going fine. Why would you put yourself through that? Why would you run that?
Oh, man, life is temporary. And life's about learning. I'd say, like, if you don't want to get married, don't go for it. But how long do these marriages last? If you get like 20 years out of a marriage and you grow apart, that is what it is. It doesn't mean that the marriage at the time that you get it is a bad thing. You just kind of grow apart sometimes. I think that's okay. I don't think that you should have to say like, no, fuck a marriage. It might be better to try to normalize better divorces or more amicable divorces. But I don't think that just because half of them end means that, like, oh, they're terrible and the experience in general is always horrible. I don't think that that's true. I'm not saying get married. I'm just saying I think that you could still have a positive experience in a marriage even if it doesn't work out in the long run. It's easier to raise kids. It's easier to do a lot of your things. There are tax benefits, but no, it's better. It's an easier experience. It's a healthier environment generally for kids, although I think that, like, we can normalize getting divorced amicably and raising kids together if it's a miserable scenario, maybe even still living together. These are a whole different, But, I don't think overall it's a terrible experience, but...
risk. If you say to someone, we've been together 5 years, and we've decided we're not going to get married. We're going to move in together, but we're not going to get married.
Okay.
Ooh, what's wrong? You have intimacy issues? What's your problem?
I don't think that that's as much of an issue anymore. I think that was more of an issue in the past. Nowadays, people don't really care as much.
Meanwhile, 56% end in divorce. It's literally... fits the legal definition of negligence. It's a negligent behavior. The way you define negligence in law school is when what you lose by not doing something, okay, is lower than the risk of harm. It's what's called a BPL analysis. So the burden of not doing a thing is lower than the likelihood, the probability of harm. So BPL, so burden, probability, and loss. Marriage is an inherently negligent activity. It's like owning a lion. Like the likelihood of someone getting hurt
That's kind of badass, to be honest with you. Are you saying Mike Tyson's an idiot? Because he owns a fucking lion. So now this guy's just being insulting.
seriously by this is very, very high. No one ever says it to you. Because why? Because, I would say something. I've been doing this for over 20 years, and I still get misty-eyed at weddings. Like, I still really, there's something in me that goes like, you know, maybe it'll work out for these two.
You still believe in love?
Sweet. I absolutely believe in love. I think love is wonderful. But love and marriage have very little to do with each other. I don't think there's much of a correlation there.
I think that there is a correlation, but I don't think you have to get married to be in love, obviously. But I still think that there is a correlation there for sure.
And I think that's where we got off track. Like, I believe in pair bonds. I don't think I can learn everything I need to know about myself from myself. I think having someone around me who sees my blind spots, and that doesn't have to be a romantic partner. That could be a friend.
Sure.
That could be a number of things. But there is something wonderful about romantic connection. We know that. I mean, the other statistic is 56% of marriages end in divorce, but 84% of people who get divorced are remarried within 5 years of their divorce.
Really?
Sure.
Let's think about that. So now you've done it and failed and felt the pain of the loss, and within 5 years, 84% are remarried.
So when you fall in love, and you're with a partner who's in love with you,
sure.
it's like hard to put the brakes on and say, you know what, that's as far as I'm going to go.
Well, I think whoever discovered water, it wasn't a fish. And I think when we're in a thing, we don't see it. And so, I mean, and this is true of any of us.
There must be some endorphins, something's being released in our brains.
Listen, you want to test that theory. The next time you're out with a couple who've been together for a while, and it like seems like they maybe got in a fight, or they're just like kind of being, impatient with each other at the table, when you go like a group thing. Just say to them, so tell me about how you met. Tell me the story of how you met. And everything on them changes. Like, they go back to that place. And there's this like, oh yeah, and she was this. Because for that second, you go back to that place. Like, you can go, someone with a horrible divorce, if you could get them to go to that place and talk to you about that time. Like, I would tell you something, when I was a kid, like every kid, you have the fantasy of like, if you were invisible, what would you do? You go to the girls' locker room, whatever. True.
As a kid, absolutely. That's what he'd do. I remember I made a video where I jokingly said, like, back in the day, I had this, like, I was like, oh, if I could freeze time. As a kid, I would look at girls' butts and stuff, you know what I mean? I was a kid. I was like a thought for like a 10-year-old. And people were like, oh, no, that's so gross. Shut up. You put too much weird shit into it. All fucking young boys think about that. Shut the fuck up. You know what I mean? Like, stop being a nerd.
I have this fantasy that if I could be invisible, I have about 8 clients that I'd like to sneak into their house and find their wedding album. Okay. Like, I know it's in the attic somewhere. Because I would love
you do a cum tribute to it?
to see what it looked like when these people loved each other. Because they are weaponized against each other now, and we are trying to kill each other, and we're taking every
but I think that's like an issue with like how divorces operate. I think partially because of lawyers, of like, you should get as much as you can, blah, 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 But I think that's a problem when it comes to divorce, is people are so like violent about it. They'll use their kids, all this other shit. They'll use their kids as a bargaining tool. That's just fucked up.
At every intimacy, everything, and we're
at their ugliest.
At their ugliest, at their worst. And there's something in me that just the thought that, like, you guys at some point you were like, there's 7.3 billion people in the world, and you're the one. Like, you're the one I just want to be with.
Yes.
And smell and touch.
Yes.
And like that feeling.
He's getting it. Smell. There's something about smell my wife. I love that I love it when I love my stinky ass wife. I don't know what it is about that woman and her smells, but I love it. I love that shit. It's fucking crazy. I have a new rule in the bedroom too. When we lay together, I force us, if we're if we're butt to butt, sometimes you don't want to touch. I get it, it's hot. But if we're gonna lay together, it has to be under the same blanket, no 2 different blankets, and we have to have some kind of skin touching. Very important. All right, that's where all the hormones and the pheromones. That's love. That's that love chemical response. So, I'm all about that. I'm all about it, baby.
We all
shut up!
know
Don't
that feeling
stop.
of like
Shut
just
up.
the electricity of another person, And I think I'm a romantic at heart in the sense that I really get it. Like, I really get why we do this. I felt it. I know it. I understand it. But tying that to the technology of marriage to me makes almost no sense whatsoever. And I actually think it's almost antagonistic to that connection with another person, because there's so much expectation that comes with marriage culturally. We've created so much stuff around it. Like, when you When you marry someone, they're supposed to be, at least in the modern Western model, your best friend, best roommate, best co-parent.
I don't think any of those things are necessary. I think that's a new concept, to be honest with you. I don't think I don't think that's something that's a marriage has historically just been forcing two people to stay together. That's like a new concept of like, this is my best friend, my best this, my best that. You know, that's very new. And then my wife is my best friend, and it's an incredible thing. But I feel like that's a new thing. Back in the day, guys, who like people would have their friends and whatnot. But yeah, I agree. My wife's my best friend. Best
travel partner, best roommate, best everything, best activity partner. Like how would one person be all of those things? That's insane. Like if I was interviewing for a job and said, I want you to be the best typist, and I also want you to be best on the phone, and I also want you to be great at that, and I ran down a list of dissimilar things. Like, or if I went to an amazing chef and I said, I know you're a great chef, but can you farm? Like, well, that has to do with food, but they're not the same thing. Like, what are you talking? So I think why do we put on people this idea, like whoever came up with the word soulmate, really we should be paying, like divorce lawyers should be paying that person dividends. Because we've convinced people that if this person isn't meeting every one of your needs, checking all of these boxes, they're not your soulmate. Your soulmate would know exactly what to do, exactly what to say.
Maybe. It's an interesting concept. I think that it's such a hard line to figure out of like the difference between compromise and like getting a new partner. I think that's so hard to figure out because I feel I've been in relationships where I stayed too long. And like obviously, because you can't, there's some things that like people cannot compromise on. You know, there's some things that you can and some things that you can't. Damn, I'm a fucking bad guy now. But then you also don't want to just, I don't know, you have to find the line between like finding somebody that you can learn to, like somebody that you can compromise with and that you grow together, like myself and my wife, versus, you know, I don't know, anything else. Because some people do seem like they just want to leave the second things get a little tough. That's ridiculous. At the same time, some people commit too hard just for the sake of the marriage. And that's also stupid. And I think it's just a very hard line. And how do you teach that to somebody? It's like impossible to teach that to somebody. You know? It's impossible to teach somebody exactly. I got lucky with my wife. You know, there was no... Like I couldn't explain to you how to find somebody to be in love with. I just couldn't do it. It's fucking, it's something. So.
At exactly the right time. I can go off on this stuff.
Yeah.
I tend to,
what do you think the secret is to keeping a marriage vital, keeping it alive?
Pussy.
You know, I think
you gotta love to fuck. I'm not kidding. It's, you know, sexual compatibility, very, very good for me. Number one. You know what I mean? It's something. It's incredible stuff.
People get unhappy in marriages the way that people go bankrupt, which is very slowly and then all at once. I think it's very slow and then it just goes off a cliff. So everybody will say, well, we divorced because he was cheating or she was cheating, or we divorced because he had an alcohol issue or a drug issue. Which lately we're seeing more like alcohol and drugs is a big thing, especially post-pandemic. There's a tremendous amount of substance abuse stuff that's causing a lot of issues in marriages.
Yeah, makes sense.
And certainly like social media has increased the accessibility of adultery and connections to other people and reconnections with people from your past who remind you of a version of yourself that you felt more excited about because you were.
That's true. Social media is a very dangerous thing in some way. It's also a good thing, you know. With the advent of every, you know, new technology, of course you're going to find new and different issues, right? But social media will really fuck you up in different ways. I mean, ultimately, I saw this. It was such a silly GIF, or excuse me, GIF. Oh my god, what am I 33? I saw this silly video. And you guys might have seen it. It's like funny. It's this goofy little video where a bunch of kids are getting gifts at like a school or something. And one kid gets like $100 or something in Roblox money. And he's like so excited. And then he looks, and then another kid got a PlayStation 5. And then he immediately sinks. And I understand the feeling. It's unfair. But when you look at it, you were so happy with what you had until you found somebody else that had something that is better, or you thought was better. And then all of a sudden, your life's fucking miserable. Now you hate out. Now you're like, oh, this is unfair. I should have got that. I should have this. I should have that. And it kind of just sits in you, and it eats at you, and it makes you feel like what you have isn't enough, and it just kicks your ass. And I feel like that's one of those things where social media adds to the comparison concept. It adds to toxic comparisons, where you are no longer happy with what you have because you see somebody else with something that might be you think is better. And if you don't, and I think that that's a huge issue on so many different areas. You know, I think it makes poor people feel poorer. I think it makes middle class people feel middle class. And I'm not saying that there aren't class issues, but I think that makes people, when you bring awareness to it, you know, it makes people less likely to want, or it makes people less likely to be happy because of all these toxic comparisons. So
younger. So it's, you know, it used to be if you like ran into the girl you banged in high school, it was like once every 10 years at a reunion, you know, or if you
ran a train on her.
In the same town as you grew up in, you know, you might run into the person at the Walmart. But now it's like on Facebook, you have all these excuses to be able to chit chat with someone, and all these benign entry points, you know, of like, oh, you know, I saw your pictures from vacation. Where did you stay in Miami? You know, and then it becomes, oh yeah, well, you looked great. I mean, boy, you look fantastic in a bikini.
He's right. These are like teasers, or what are they called? They call testers. You're like, oh, hey, long time no talk. Like, you look, where'd you guys go? You went to fucking Disney? I don't, you know what I mean? I don't need to talk to any of these bitches from the past. So.
And then all of a sudden, we're off to the races and we're chatting with each other. So you know, if we were going to invent like an infidelity machine, you couldn't do better than Facebook and Instagram. I mean, that's about as good as it gets. But.
Or TikTok, bro. Let me tell you something. TikTok's wild. Have you guys ever come across the TikTok where it's older people that are like just trying to date? It's very bizarre. It is super fucking bizarre. Honestly, it's fucking weird.
I genuinely think that the secret to staying happy in a marriage is probably the same secret to maintaining a healthy weight. You know, don't wait till you get super fat and then try to lose the weight.
Excuse me, sir. I don't know how to do that.
Don't wait until you get really sick. Like, my sister's a dentist, and she always says, if you have a toothache, there's nothing I can do really. Like, I can pull the tooth, I can give you a root canal, but like, I can prevent you from getting a toothache. If you just come see me regularly and you just floss and you just brush your teeth, you'll never get a toothache. By the time you're...
Well, I mean, you don't have to necessarily pull a toothache. You don't have a toothache but I get what he's saying. If you have a cavity, all they can do is pull it out. You know, you got to the point of no return. That's what he's saying.
Tooth hurts, something is already seriously wrong. By the time you're in a divorce lawyer's office, you're fucked. The whole thing's fucked at that point.
Yeah,
like, you'd be better off just, you know, figuring out the preventative maintenance, right? Like,
it's so interesting because like, I feel like that's very difficult for a lot of people to figure out, you know, preventative maintenance, because preventative, in a lot of instances that it really means communication. And then what does that mean to people? Nothing. People don't really understand what communication means or what it is. And then they'll just be miserable. You know, it's the issue is when you are upset with your partner and then you just don't talk about it. Something bothers you and you just don't talk about it. That's where things start to really grow. You know, you're not a big fan of your sex life, but you just don't talk about it. You know, you're not a big fan of a particular behavior that your partner has, but you just don't talk about it. And not talking about this over and over and over again. You know, you just let things move on. You're not compromising when you move on. You're just letting it stew. Compromise is when you talk about it and you say, hey, I don't really enjoy the sex that we have. You know, obviously you want to communicate that better than just saying, I hate the sex. It's terrible. Compromising, though, is like, hey, you know, let's say they have sex. Let's say they're not having enough sex. Hey, I feel like we don't have enough sex. Let's say I'm a man and I'm with a woman and I'm just telling her I'm in a relationship. Let's say I'm not gay. Let's say I'm a guy and I'm with a girl. I feel like we're not having enough sex, and I just don't talk to her about it. I'm more likely to cheat because I'm a man. And men have a different relationship with sex, and I'm going to get horny. And I could have talked to my partner about it, but I decided not to, out of some ridiculous ego or, you know, stoicism bullshit. But then let's say I decided to talk to her about it. And I said, hey, listen, we're not having enough sex. That'll open the door for her to say, well, I feel like we don't have enough emotional sex. My wife will tell me sometimes that she's in the mood to make love, right? Not just have sex, because we have different types of sex. Sometimes we may have very intimate sexual intercourse. Sometimes we fuck like we fuck like we don't even know each other. Not in a bad way though. Sometimes there's the multiple. Sometimes we're just disgusting and dirty. Sometimes we get a little aggressive, right? And on the same token, the woman could have brought it up to him. She could have been like, hey, I feel like we don't make enough love, right? So both sides are not coming forward to have the conversation. Their life, the guy wants more, the girl wants different. And instead of just talking it out and like, okay, and that's hard, by the way. It's not easy to talk that out. Like, you know, we're egotistical creatures. Hearing somebody tell you that you're in love with, that the sex that you're having is inadequate, because that's what that woman would be saying. That hurts you because you don't want it to be, right? And then as the other partner, you know, hearing that the other person isn't satisfied with the amount of sex that they're having, that can make you feel inadequate as well. And that can make you defensive. And then all of a sudden you're yelling at each other because, well, we'd fuck more if you, well, I'd do more if you. It's kind of where the conversation shifts to. So I feel like the communication part is expressing a problem and then navigating the right way to deal with this situation. Sometimes you might express a problem and then walk away. If you need to do like that, sometimes you can have like a deep conversation about it, but you need to be vulnerable and you need to not let your ego get the ahead of you.
Latchkey Goth Boy super chatted $2. They're both talking to their gay friend.
Okay. What if every time you try to talk to your partner about your frustrations, they turn it around on you and make you feel horrible for bringing it up? That's what I'm saying. I was just saying that's what happens. You know, is there something that's happening to you? You'd want, like, whatever your frustration is, you bring up the frustration. They say, well, this is your fault. Just be like, okay, like, you just talk it through. I mean, it's hard. I don't know exactly how you would do that without like a therapist facilitating it or somebody facilitating it. But you know, you could try to set the stage of like, let's try to have like a good conversation about our relationship. You know, I'm going to express frustration with you, and then you could express your frustration with me, and maybe we can come to some middle ground. So yeah, that's the problem with like an ego thing.
Like, change the oil in your car. Like, so if you reverse engineer divorce,
use cooking oil.
Most people, the marriage killer, you know, the cheating or the gambling or the whatever, that's the symptom. Like the problem is these little disconnections. You know, one of the best stories I have is I had a client who I did her divorce, and we'd spend a lot of time together, because you do. You know, when you're a divorce lawyer, you spend a lot of time with people and you get to know them very well. I mean, people will lie to their therapist. They won't lie to their divorce lawyer because A, there's no reason to, and B, I need to know everything. And
that's a good point too. It's hard to get good therapy. It's hard to get good therapy for most people, because a lot of people look at a therapist like a goal, like a destination. A lot of people look at their therapist like a destination. They look at their therapist and they go, okay, I'm here because I'm experiencing some kind of issue, with my behavior, most likely, some kind of behavior. And I want to be done with it. And so, like, what do I need to say? Then they'll say a lot of people will just tell the therapist what they want to hear, what they think they want to hear. You know, they'll placate the therapist. Oh, yeah, this, that, and the other thing. Therapists can't help you if you're going to fucking lie to them. You have to be open and vulnerable. You have to tell them the nitty gritty. So
it's all attorney-client privilege. And this woman, we were sitting outside the courtroom waiting on a break-in testimony, and she was a young woman in her probably like late 30s. You know, very attractive. And
you fuck her?
We were just chit-chatting, and I said to her, you know, was there a moment when you realized the marriage is over? You know, like, was there a moment? And she said, yeah. And I said, when was it? And she said, there was this granola that I like. She said, they only sold it at like this particular grocery store. Okay. And I like to put it in my yogurt. And she said, he used to always, whenever I'd be running low on it, I would just open the thing one day and a new bag would be there. She's like, and she's like, it made me feel so loved. Like, I didn't have to ask. He didn't want credit for it. Like, he didn't go like, oh, did you see? I got your granola that you wanted. You know, like, he just would do this thing, you know? And she said it was just something that, like, it always made me smile. She said every time the granola was running low and there was a new bag of granola, I just felt very loved, you know? And she said one day the granola ran out. And I thought, oh, that's weird. You know, maybe he didn't see it. She's like, so I left the bag in there because I thought, well, at some point he'll notice. And he didn't notice. She goes, so I took the bag out and I waited and he didn't get a new bag. And I thought, okay, this thing's going down. And I thought to myself, wow, that's like, that's such a small thing. Like,
It's interesting though, because that for me communicates some kind of like a big issue, like a passive aggressive issue. Because if I put myself in that position, I'm thinking I'm not going to do. Fine, I'm not going to do this. You feel like your partner hurt you, and fine, I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm just not going to do this. And people can get petty like that when they're upset. My wife and I do that to each other sometimes. And then we try not to. We'll talk it through. That's a big thing. This behavior always happens. My wife and I aren't perfect. We're petty as fuck. My wife does that more than me. Just like I do I'm lazier than my wife. Right? We both have our problems. And obviously, that's not a particularly good behavior to engage in. That's a dangerous behavior, because then you just start taking shots back and forth, and you start doing things to hurt the other person. Which is obviously not going to, and it's just going to build up, and you're going to have more and more resent build up, more and more anger, more and more hatred, more and more this. But it's just not. It's obviously non-ideal. Hot take, right? Scalding take. Don't do that. But yeah, that's why communication is so important.
granola. Like you just, but these are the things. Like these are the little things that make us feel loved, and there are gestures of love. And when I said to her, was there anything like that for you with him? And she said, yeah, blowjobs. And I almost spit out my coffee. And she goes, no. She goes, when we were first dating and even first married, she's like, I used to give him blowjobs a lot. She's like, do it in the morning, took 2 minutes. And he was like super happy the rest of the day, She's like, the rest of the day, he would like call me or text me and be like, oh, that was so good this morning. I had such pep in my step now. And she's like, it was just like, what did it really take out of my life to do that? And it made him feel good. She's like, and then I got to a point where I was like, well, you know what? No, I'll wait. And then tonight we can have sex and we'll both enjoy that. Like, what do I owe him a blowjob? Like, no, like I don't owe him that, And then she said I got to a point where it was like, I look back and I'm like, yeah, I guess I didn't do that as often, hardly ever really,
Which came first?
I said that to her and she said,
it's interesting because it's interesting because my wife and I have had conversations like this before, where when we first started dating, like my wife was a lot more sexual with me in some different ways. Like she would do more stuff like that. And we had a conversation about it. It was like, hey, how come this stopped? How come that stopped? And we would talk about it. And it was never anything that was like pointed or targeted. It's just like, oh, like we're together now. We live together now. There's other things that we'll do. Maybe sometimes I maybe didn't shower that day. It was part of it too. Maybe I woke up, because sometimes I won't do that. Sometimes I'll wake up and I'll wait for the shower at the end of the day. Maybe I'll do some chores or something. And you develop a resentment sometimes. You get like, what the fuck? Like, why aren't you doing this? But that communication of like, oh yeah, why aren't you doing this? We had that. I was like, oh, that makes perfect sense. Obviously I gotta shave. I gotta shower more. Sometimes I wouldn't shave, and when I don't shave my wiener, my wife doesn't really want to go down there because she gets hairs in her mouth. But then for me, when she doesn't shave, sometimes I like that more. So communication really is extraordinarily important, because people are going to exhibit behaviors as you're together for longer. And sometimes just knowing why can be very positive. It doesn't even matter if it changes. It doesn't have to get better. But if you express that frustration, sometimes just knowing what it is, that makes it better. Yeah, don't shower ever. I mean, why do you need to shower? Am I right? I certainly don't wash my hair in the shower. But the communication is really important. Just being heard can be very important. And these are the things you don't want to build up. You want to be honest with yourself and with your partner. You want to communicate with yourself and your partner. You want to learn how to communicate and not have a meltdown. It's easy to be like, yeah, I would communicate well. You probably not. You probably are. It's difficult to learn how to communicate. So
she said, I couldn't tell you. She said, but I think it's the same thing.
It's the same thing.
And I do think it's the same thing.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying blowjobs and granola is all you need to know, but, and I'm not, by the way, I'm not saying that a blowjob is a small thing. I don't think I have any right to. I've never given one. But it seems like a phenomenal feat, and I'm grateful for every one I've ever received. But I don't...
My wife has phenomenal feet.
I don't think it's a massive investment, right? Just like buying someone's granola is not a massive... Just like
when you love somebody, you love doing things for them.
Right, their pleasure
you love
pleases
making
you.
their life better.
Their joy pleases you.
Sure.
Like their happiness makes you happy.
Exactly.
And somewhere along the line, and it happens a lot in marriage, it becomes, well, I'm not happy, why should you be happy? you know? And then that creates a spiral. And I really believe that that spiral could go in the other direction. Like if he did the granola, I think the blowjobs would have come, you know? And if the, like,
Just
and if
like
the
he would
blowjobs
have
were there, I
come.
bet he'd have bought the granola. Like I can't prove
Yeah, sorry.
that. There's no control group, you know? I can't run that research, but it
Probably a little
feels
more complicated than that, but generally, yeah, sure.
to me like those little things, like leaving a note, you know, I've said to some of my friends, you know, when they say to me like, you know, as a divorce lawyer, you know, you see all this misery, like how do I stay out of your office? And I'll often say, I'm like, it's dumb little things, man. I'm like, just leave her a note. I'm like, leave her a note in the morning. Just leave a little note that says, hey, beautiful. You know, so it was so fun watching that movie with you last night.
Isn't it interesting though? Because that dumb little thing can turn into a problem. You know, you start leaving notes for your wife, and then all of a sudden you stop, and all of a sudden she goes, "Why'd you stop?" It turns into a whole new conversation. It's truly is, you know, interesting. You have to keep up with it, you know, with something. Just keep up with consideration. That's what you really want to do.
Hey, so glad we got to have a date. I'll be thinking of you today. Love you. Like, what does that take? That takes like a minute, not even. Like, and look what it can do. Like, look at how that makes this person feel. And even if right away it doesn't work, on that moment it doesn't work. Okay, do it enough times. Like, and then you're either going to figure out that this person's gone, and then just fucking bail. You're done. Like, because if you try for long enough and you give like that, but if you're not giving like that, and then you're not getting back either, well, I'm not surprised. You know, that's how you end up in my office, is this death spiral of everyone like, well, I'm not buying the granola, she's not giving me blowjobs. Well, I'm not giving him blowjobs, he's mean to me. Okay, well, everybody's just has an equal right to be fucking miserable.
Yep.
I think if you're happy with yourself, like truly happy with who you are at that point in your life, or whatever the situation is, I think it's easier for you to be happy with your partner.
Yeah, but I would argue that
As
if
long
you're
as
not happy with yourself, having someone happy with you is certainly not going to hurt your feeling of who you are, right? Like I don't need someone to tell me I'm handsome for me to have a nice day, but I can't think of anybody telling me I was handsome that it ruined my day. You know?
True. Yep, that's what you got to gas your partner up to. My wife always gassed me up. I love her. So.
You know, most of the time you're like, oh, that's nice. You know, I got that going for me. Like so yeah, I think self-love, of course, is the most important love, and to be secure in who you are and to not allow your self-definition to be easily swayed or pulled. Like if you believe the good reviews, you got to believe the bad ones too. I get that. But I just don't think kindness, like it's just such an easy, like especially if it's easy. Like it's easy stuff. Like just telling someone that they're beautiful or handsome or that you're cheering for. It just, to me with marriage or pair bonds, I shouldn't even say marriage. Like the world is trying to kill you all the time, you know? Like people are criticizing you all the time. You feel like a failure a lot of the time. If you compare yourself to other people, you'll constantly be, you know, comparison's the thief of joy. So why not have like one person who's just cheering for you? You know, like constructive criticism is criticism. It's still just criticism. So if your spouse is just sitting around.
But you also need to make sure you're giving constructive criticism, right? Because sometimes maybe your criticism isn't super constructive. Sometimes you might give a criticism out of anger. Sometimes you might save that criticism for when you're angry. Or you might save that criticism as a response to another criticism. And that's how things spiral. You might have a perfectly reasonable thing to be frustrated with. Hey, I'm frustrated with this. But if you save it until your partner decides to vent their frustration, all of a sudden it becomes a competition. It becomes like who's angrier competition. Who has more right to be upset competition. You don't want to do that. You truly don't want to do something like that. You know, that's why it's helpful to have that line of communication.
Criticizing you and telling you all the things you could do to improve yourself instead of just being a fan and just saying, you know what, I know who you are and you're beautiful. I know who you are and your heart is good. And betting on the best parts of a person. I think that there's very little downside to that. You know, I think it would put guys like me out of business if people really leveraged that the right way.
I asked you earlier if you believe in love, but you said you do. Do you believe in marriage?
I mean, I believe people believe in marriage.
No, but do you?
Yeah. Do I believe in marriage? I don't. I don't think it's a useful technology. I understand culturally why people do it, but I don't think people should need it. I know I certainly don't need marriage. I don't think marriage, I was married. I was married before I really ever thought about what does that mean. You know, I married my college sweetheart. You know, I got married because that's what you do. You get married.
Yeah, it's an expectation.
But I hadn't thought about it as a technology and why it's there. I didn't understand it the way I do now. You know, there's a line from a Joseph Brodsky poem that he wrote when his wife died, where he says, "I wish I knew no astronomy when stars appear." And I feel that way as a divorce lawyer. Like, I wish I knew no astronomy when stars appear. I wish I didn't know what the end of so many marriages looks like, because I think I would have a more optimistic and unrealistic view of it. I would.
Yeah, but you'd be divorced and giving away half your.
I'd be foolish. Yeah, I'd be fool. I'd be as foolish. But I don't know.
Hey! Ignorance is bliss, baby. That's what they say.
I don't know that it's always good to know, right? Sometimes there's tremendous joy to be had, and like falling feels like flying for a little while, you know. So you hit the ground, it feels really good.
But as I said earlier,
I don't know, man. If you know you're gonna hit the fucking ground, well, I guess that's the whole point. You'd have to be, but I feel like most people know if they're falling, they're gonna hit the ground.
But now that the life expectancy of man is around the 80s or something, then it's like, so you're gonna do this from your 20s or 30s until your 80s.
But if you're literally just always working with marriages ending, then how would you value the ones that work? Yeah, that's true. Well, that's the thing, is like he only deals with the marriages that end. He doesn't deal with successful marriages, and so that's obviously going to effectively ruin him.
Well, marriage is a technology that was designed for when women died in childbirth and when men died in their 40s if they were lucky.
Exactly.
50s if they were super lucky. Like if you were in your 50s or 60s, you were an elder. You know, that was pretty amazing. And most women died in childbirth. Like childbirth is traumatic. It's a traumatic thing. And before modern medicine and before we understood antibiotics. So marriage is I don't think anyone ever planned that it was going to be, okay, we're going to do this forever. You know, we're going to do this till we're till we're 100. I mean, but I think that's part of a bigger problem. You know, I don't remember who said it, but I remember someone saying, I can't remember who it was, but we are prehistoric creatures, right? Like we are biological creatures living in medieval institutions like education, work, with godlike technology. How do you think that ends? Like you think that ends in happily ever after? Like that's insane. Like marriage was not designed. I mean, think about even the early days of marriage. Think about every Rodgers and Hammerstein musical. You know, think about Oklahoma. You know, where you'd have like there's like the 3 people in town that aren't married. You know, and you sort of pick which of the 3 you know you were going to go be with. And now you have access to just an endless supply of the opposite sex, or I shouldn't even say the opposite sex. You have an endless supply of romantic partners in a device in your hand.
Very woke. True, though.
How does that possibly stand up? How does marriage, the idea of monogamy, forced monogamy or enforced monogamy, how does that ever survive in that environment? I don't think it can.
I think it can. You know, I think it just comes down to people need to be smarter. I think that we are in an age of actual people being happy. I think in the past, people haven't been happy in their marriages. You know, like he said, they would just die, right? And it would end, or, you know, something else would happen in some capacity. But that's the thing. People haven't really learned to love correctly and learn to be more attentive, and we're in a very new age of actually like having to like, you know, learn to be a good partner. That's something that's new, and I think it's going to be very difficult. I don't think that you have to get married, and if the institution of marriage goes away, like whatever, but it has a lot to do with, you know, discovering yourself and finding yourself. There are more and more vices out there every single day. The technology is very accessible. People do have porn addictions. People do have like addictions to spending money. People have, you know, people have porn addictions, they have gambling addictions, alcohol, substances, and things like, you know, OnlyFans and whatnot can be an addictive substance. You know, it mixes porn with spending money. And I don't know if this is something that women experience, but for men, spending money can be, well, women do have this. They fucking shop. But spending money can be addictive. You know, it can give you a sense of power. And I think that that's part of it as well. And it's a new addiction, and nobody talks about it because people have a shame in it. And I think people need to talk about it more, to be like, yeah, you know what? I had a bad relationship with doing this, a bad relationship with doing that. And then other people can go, oh, you know what? I have a bad relationship with this too. I have a bad relationship with this particular behavior. Like, let's talk about it. It's some kind of an addiction, and then we can process it together. I think that's how it is for everything, you know, having those conversations about it for some kind of harm reduction. Without that, I mean, what are we really doing? We're just kind of fucking around. We're just using, you know, old concepts of the world to push us forward rather than really exploring the new ones emotionally. So
I don't think it's realistic. The statistics prove me right. You know, the statistics are absolutely in my favor. Now, again, get married as many times as you want if you have a prenup. If you have a prenup, go get married. Getting married's a blast. Being married is difficult. You know, someone once said that it's great to be married sometimes. The problem is you're married all the time.
So you're a fan of
Then you get to do you get to have Disney together. You know, that's the thing is like you spend a lot of money, right? If you were to spending money, you get to spend a lot of money on a wedding, and everybody's happy for you, and this that. And then once the excitement's over, that's when it's like that's the true test, isn't it? You know,
prenups.
I'm a huge fan of prenups. I mean, I shouldn't be, because a prenup for a couple of $1,000s will save you hundreds of thousands of dollars potentially in legal fees, if not millions. So there are clients I have that have spent over $1 million just in their legal fees, that if they had spent $2,000 on a prenup, none of that. They'd still have that money in their pocket. And that's incredible to me. Like, I have 2 sons who are adults. They are absolutely going to have prenups. Like, they have to have prenups. They'd be fools to not have prenups. It's like jumping out of a plane with no parachute. Why?
I think that if you're that depends on how you get married, right? I mean, if you're somebody who has a lot of money and then you find somebody, prenup is obviously a good idea. But this is one of the things, is this guy seems to be speaking, speaking from a point of a lot of like money. Like, get a prenup. Like, yeah, if you're a millionaire marrying somebody, get a prenup. Most people aren't there. Most people are starting a little earlier, and they're trying to build and grow together. And I think a prenup for, you know, let's say 2 people that are younger, let's say like 25, it was probably just going to be destructive to the relationship more than anything else. You don't necessarily need to get a prenup if you're younger. You should get one. You're building and growing together. And if you're with each other for 20 years and, you know, you go from a nobody to a somebody, your partner is part of that growth. Your partner allowed you to do that in some capacity by helping you. And the help is going to be different depending on the scenario. But, you know, you're building with your partner. Let's say one person decides to stay home and take care of the kids and the house and this and that, and then you decide to put all your energy into work. You're able to do that because you have somebody at home doing those other things for you. You have somebody at home that you trust to be with your kids, to raise them with your values, to take care of your house and home and clean it to the way that's acceptable, to make food for you, to take care of you in a different way. So
why would you do that? You know, it's stupid. Prenups are enforceable. They make sense. I actually think there's something very romantic about prenups, because they're forcing you to have a conversation about this relationship. Like, I genuinely believe that we are the most aware of our health just after we got sick, right? Like, if you wake up and you have a toothache, all you can think about is the fact your tooth hurts. And then your toothache goes away. And for like a week,
you're taking care of your teeth.
You go, oh my God, at least I don't have a toothache. You know? But then a month goes by. You don't wake up and go, well, at least I don't have
a prenup isn't just about money. Prenup is just to divide assets. Yeah, but if you don't have any assets, what is there to divide? I don't think that a prenup is necessarily necessary if when you get married, if you get married early and you don't have a whole lot of assets. Like, a prenuptial agreement doesn't really make sense if you don't have a lot of assets. And the point is, most people when they're getting married aren't like loaded, right? Like, if you're the average person, I would argue, gets married before they've really accumulated anything. I don't really think a prenup would be necessary in those situations. Especially since he said apparently a prenup is very expensive, so I don't know. That's what he alluded to. So
toothache. You know, it's the furthest thing from your mind.
This is like thousands of dollars. Looking it up, it looks like it's like $500. Oh, this is between $3,000 and $8,000. You know, that's in New York, so most people are not going to spend money because that. Like, do you think most people have $3,000 to $8,000 to be like, yeah, fuck it, let's do it? No, probably not. It's not something that's realistic for the majority of people getting married.
But theoretically, you could wake up today and go, I don't have a toothache, I don't have a backache, I don't have a head cold. Like, this is a great day.
What does a typical prenup look like?
The easiest prenup in the world. Easiest. Yours, mine, ours. That's it. Yours, mine, ours. If it's in your name, it's yours. If it's in my name, it's mine.
Like in a divorce, everything, all the assets are split 50-50.
Well, no, what you say in a prenuptial agreement is, if it's an asset or a liability, if it's in my name, it's mine. If it's in your name, it's yours. If it's in our joint names, we'll divide it 50-50. That's it. Yours, mine, ours. And then you have to have ongoing conversations throughout the marriage about, you know, hey, I got this bonus at work. Do I put it in my account? Do I put it in the joint account?
But if the husband owns a house that's worth, whatever, $2 million, and he marries a woman, the house is his still?
Well, they have to have a conversation. Do I owe you a house?
That's an awkward conversation.
Okay.
Yeah, sure.
You know what's a more awkward conversation?
That's the thing. Like, yeah, if you're rich and you own a whole fucking house, like, yeah, you should probably have the prenuptial conversation, right? Yeah, for sure.
Conversation 10 years later with a lawyer about the fact that you have to give half of this house away to someone. Isn't it better to have that conversation when you still, like, why would you learn how to fight in a fight?
But won't that undermine the love that each person feels?
Why? You're going to die.
Well, yeah, I get what he's saying. Like, you might feel offended by doing the prenup. I get that. But if you're somebody who's rich and the poor person is offended by getting a prenup, then that's probably a good sign that it's doomed. You know?
Does that undermine your life? Or does it make you conscious of the fact that this is finite and that you should be out there? Like, I think having a conversation with your partner about, look, I love you, you love me. We want to do this thing together.
The Barney
but
thing.
The numbers are against us and the world is antagonistic to it. And I hope we'll be together forever. But if we split up, what do we owe each other? What do you expect from me? Because I have to tell you something. I'm a fair person. I'm a fair person. If you say to me, you know, Jim, if I'm not going to work as hard because you make a good living. So if we split up, I'm going to need help for a couple of years because I'm not going to pay attention to my career. Okay? Is that unreasonable? That's totally reasonable. You know, if I say, sure, hey, listen, I have this house and I bought it, you know, but I'm buying it with money that I made really before we were together. So if we split up, I don't really think you deserve half of it. Sure. I think that if we bought things for it together, that, okay, those things you can half of, but the house itself, like that's money I had before I met you. And why can't you have that conversation? Why not? You instead, I mean, you buy a house. You do a HUD-1, a lead paint disclosure. You got to sign all these things that this is how much the interest is going to be. And this is what you get married, you don't get a fucking pamphlet. You don't get anything. You just did the most legally significant thing you're ever going to do other than die. And no one has explained any of it to you. People come into my office and they go, well, my retirement account, that's in my name. And I'm like, yeah, it doesn't matter. It's in your name. Okay, was it acquired during the marriage? Okay, she's got half of it. Well, I have this bank account, but it's in my sole name. It's money that I inherited from my mom. I'm like, okay, and it's in your name. Yeah, but you inherited that money during the marriage. And did you put money that you earned during the marriage in that account also? Yeah, okay, that's commingled and transmuted. That's now marital property.
Interesting.
So they don't know that. Why? Because no one tells them that when they're getting married. All it is, you spend more time talking about the cake than you do talking about the fact that you just opted out of the title system.
Hey. Eating is very important, okay? That's just my opinion. But yeah, that does make sense. You know, I guess that would probably, I mean, overall, having these conversations before you get married might actually lead to a better marriage. Like, yeah, for sure, I could see that. People don't do that, unfortunately, right? So, yeah, sure, it would be better if people did that. Yeah, I agree.
That's gigantic. You can't...
I mean, that's part of good communication, right? Is having conversations about what it's like to be married. We do have conversations like, do you want to have kids? And, like, what kind of school do you want our kid to go to? What would you want your kid to be? You know? How would you deal... How would, like, this is another good question, is like, how would you deal with it if our kid came out with special needs or something? These are questions that generally seem more typical. And we'll have those. Oh, I'm not going over there. Fuck that shit. But we won't have the questions about, you know, like, how does it work if it doesn't work out well? And it sounds like you're putting a bad omen into the air. Like, oh, you don't think it's going to work out? I think that's part of the emotional response. It's like, oh, so you don't think this is going to work out? And people will get offended by that. But you kind of have to have these conversations.
Legally change the beneficiary of your life insurance, even to your children, if you're married, without your spouse signing a consent to that. No one tells you that when you get married. Elvis can marry you for $20 at a drive-through cathedral. And it's a legal status, a massive legal. You buy your spouse a Rolex, you bought yourself one half of a Rolex. You buy someone a birthday present who you're married to, you bought yourself one half of that birthday present. Nobody knows. People don't know that. They learn that for the first time in my office or in a courtroom. That's insane. What other thing in the world, like anything else, any other contract, you would say, well, wait a minute, no one explained that to me. No one explained that to me. When I leased this car, no one explained to me that there's wear and tear. It doesn't say it anywhere in the contract, right? Okay. Marriage contract doesn't say that. It doesn't say, you know, oh, and by the way, you're opting out of the title system and your retirement assets and all these other things. And if there's any debts and you could have enhanced earning capacity or celebrity goodwill that has to be valued by forensic accountants that'll cost you $100,000. No contract that says that. It just says, yep, we're getting married. It's 2 witnesses. We're good. Like, what other contract in the United States or anywhere has that lack of disclosure and is that binding? None. Zero. None.
Interesting.
So why a prenup? Yes, that's an awkward conversation, I guess. I don't know that it has to be. And I have to tell you, the more awkward of a conversation it is, the more you should think twice about getting married. Because if you can't have a conversation with this person about the possibility that someday one or both of you might hurt each other, like, how many people, while they're still happy and in love, say something like, you know, babe, I love you, but we're going to disagree about something at some point. And when we do, how do you like to fight? Like, do you need a minute? Like, do you need to be alone for a minute so you can kind of calm down? Or are you the like, hey, we got to figure this out. We can't go to bed angry. Like, because let's talk about that now while we're not in a fight. Like,
well, I mean, that's something you'll learn before you get married, typically, because you should be having those conversations. You typically will fight before you get married, right? You'll usually you'll have a fight and you'll be able to explore that concept before you get married. You should, unless, like, you know, if you're together for a couple of years and you didn't learn to fight, then that's silly.
Let's talk about it now while we still get along and we're happy and we're trying to figure out how to navigate each other. It's hard enough to navigate yourself. I want to navigate another human being. Why don't we have that conversation now? But no, we don't. We learn on the job. We learn how to fight in a fight, which is insane.
Yeah. Well, no, I think that makes perfect sense. That does make sense. You learn how to fight while you're fighting. Like, yeah, that makes perfect sense. You shouldn't learn how to fight while you're married, but...
Yeah, but again, why? Well, because it's, you know, it's awkward. It'd be awkward to have.
But yeah, that being said, it is a good conversation to have. Like, yeah, it's not like a negative conversation to have, like, how do you fight? But, you know.
That conversation. More awkward than getting in a fight where you don't know the rules of engagement, where you don't know how your partner does better or would feel better. Like, and you're not going to ask them that in the heat of battle, you know? So why wouldn't you have that awkward conversation while you have this abundance of affection for each other? I mean, when I negotiate prenups, it's the easiest thing in the world in a sense, because these two people really like each other. You know, they're about to get married. So they're clearly not trying to kill each other at that point. They clearly like each other. So you just say, hey, listen, go home, talk to your fiance about X, Y, and Z, and see what they, you know, see what they think, and tell them what your concern is. And very often people will come back and say to me, I mean, I have to tell you, I've been doing this now, you know, over 20 years. I do a lot of prenups. I do maybe 5, 6 prenups a month. Sometimes during like pre-wedding season, which is the fall and before the summer, I'll do 10, 15 a month. The people who say to me, oh, well, I don't want to have that conversation. You know, they get the prenup, and within 3, 4 years, they're divorced. Sometimes 5.
How do you know that? I guess maybe they go back to him.
Years and then 7 years, but they're the ones who get divorced. They have no business getting married. Like the ones who have the discussion and figure out well, I'm worried because if you keep the place, yeah, you're right. Okay, so what if I give you this amount of money and it's this much for each year? Okay, yeah, that's cool. Let's do it that way. Those people, they'll probably never put the prenup in a safe someplace. You'll never look at it probably.
Probably. Because marriage in many instances. I made a skit called "If Mr. Beast Was from the Hood" yesterday, and it's doing better than any skit I've ever made in the past few months. That's good, man. That's great. That's great. Mr. Beast would never go to the hood though. Oh, from the hood, because he's Mr. Beast. I think he's a little racist. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, because they're able to talk to each other and they're able to talk about hard things. How are you?
True. Let me go pee real quick.
You're going to be married to someone, have children with someone, and you can't talk about hard things. You know, like how? How are you going to navigate life and not be able to talk about hard things? Like, that's silly. So if you can't talk about hard things, don't get fucking married. It's okay. You don't have to. You can stay together. But people love. I had a client, no joke, guy was in his 70s. He was married 4 times. I did his 3rd and 4th divorces, and he was getting married for a 5th time. And I said to him, I was like, because I actually thought he's older. So I thought.
I feel like once you go through like 2, what are you doing? You know what I mean? Like, oh, I mean, no shit, the guy that's been married 5 fucking times is going to have a problem. Why are you getting married so much? I don't understand that.
Like, does he know you don't have to marry them anymore? Like, maybe he doesn't know.
He's dividing his assets.
Yeah, maybe someone didn't tell him. Like, maybe someone didn't tell him, like, you can fuck them. You don't have to marry them anymore. You can just do that.
He's dividing his asset multiple times.
Well, and it's getting smaller and smaller every time. But I said to him, I was like, why are you doing this again? I was like, you don't have to get married. Like, you're clearly not great at it, you know? Like, and he was very funny. He said, you know, Jim, he said, you buy a car and you drive it for 200,000 miles and eventually the engine craps out. So you go out and you buy a Ferrari or you buy some flashy sports car and you drive it for a couple months and you realize this is not the car for me. So you get rid of it. Then you get another car. And, you know, you think this one's going to be the one for you, but, you know, after you drive it for like a year, you realize, yeah, this is not the car for me.
You can lease them instead of buying them.
You're going to walk everywhere for the rest of your life? Yeah, well, that was my answer. You could lease them. You could lease them. Or you could have some other alternate arrangement. I mean, here's the thing about marriage is it's a technology. So we made it up. So we can change.
Well, that's the thing is that, like, for this guy, I think the marriage might be the only way he can get these girls if he marries them. Because they're thinking, like, oh, I'm only really going to be with this guy if he'll marry me and give me some of his money. That's the problem. Like, yeah, you shouldn't be getting married, but I wonder if these people would be interested. Because whether you like it or not, you know, money is awesome. But people also want emotional fulfillment. And if all you can really offer is money, you're probably not going to be able to draw an emotional fulfillment relationship. Well, obviously, you won't be able to because all you got is money. You don't have anything else to offer. I think that's one of the aspects of it, too. That's a problem.
Change it.
You think marriage will change in the next 20 years?
No. I actually think it's going to have, I mean, I think the pendulum always swings hard in the other direction. We have a tendency as a culture to overcorrect. So I think we're heading into a spiral of like traditional stuff. Really? Like I think you're going to see like people getting like super religious again, and people are going to get super dogmatic. I think we're going to see
Well, we already are seeing that. How old is this video? It's a month ago. Okay, what he's not wrong, but what he's saying isn't like a prediction. It's already happening. It's been happening for a while. Been happening for like 4 years. That's like the pendulum swinging backwards. It was like Donald Trump, you know. And then the reaction to that was like hyper insane liberalism, you know, leftism, I'd say. And now it's swinging back again, and we're kind of having a difficult time figuring out where the middle is.
The trad wife thing. We're going to see the hypermasculinity. We're going to see like a very, you know, we've gone so far in the direction of postmodernism where nothing means anything and everything's just, you know, like there's no depth. We become like Sartre, you know, like we've become so postmodern that it's become almost a form of rugged individualism. I think we're going to swing in the other direction now, and traditional institutions are going to get popular again. It will be. I mean, you know, from a marriage place, it's going to be great because I think people are going to get married. I mean, people were slowing down on getting married for a while, and they were getting married later, and they were having kids later, or declining to have kids. And I think as a culture, we start re-solidifying into gender roles or gender tropes, depending on how we want to look at it. I think you're going to see marriage resurge again, but I think that it's still going to be as flawed of a technology as it ever was. And I think we have so much out there now to compare ourselves to. You know, you used to compare yourself to the neighbors next door and what car they had in the driveway and what they were wearing when they left for church on Sunday. Now you're just looking at everyone's greatest hits while living your gag reel. You know? Absolutely.
That's what social media is. You're looking at everybody's greatest hits. That's perfect. When it comes to social media, you're looking at everybody's best version of their life because they're not putting out the bad versions. They're not one of two things. Either the best version of their life, or they're like, oh, look at this, I got this, I'm celebrating. It doesn't matter who it is, whether it's a celebrity or a friend. They're going to put up their celebrations, they're going to put up their positives and everything. The only time people put up negatives are when they're looking for some kind of garnering sympathy, right? And it doesn't even give us a sense of, oh, look, that person is a real person. It gives us a sense of like, oh, this person is trying to garner sympathy. A lot of times people are, you know, I think that it's probably difficult to show like not a great moment in the correct way, you know, with a solid boundary. And it's very complicated, but you're either seeing the best of somebody's life or generally, or they're trying to like emotionally provoke you in some capacity.
You know, and you're never looking at any of that stuff when you're having like a peak experience. You know, you're on the toilet or you're bored and you're looking at everyone's hashtag blessed. And meanwhile, they're in my office. Like, I can't tell you how many people do a consult with me and they're cheating and they haven't slept with their spouse in 3 years and they're miserable. And you're looking at their Instagram and it's all like best life ever, hashtag greatest hobby ever. And you're like, what is this? It's performance art. You know, it's an advertisement of how happy you are. But this is what people are comparing themselves to. They're looking at that and going, well, my marriage isn't that good. That marriage isn't that good. Trust me, that marriage isn't that good. That marriage is in my... Look at celebrities. You don't even need to look at the people you know. Look at celebrities. Before they do it is with great sadness that we advise that we're going to be moving in separate directions and consciously uncoupling. And like that, right before that, it's like, oh no, we're happy, we're great, we're phenomenal. You know, we're constantly advertising how wonderful our relationships are while they're on fire. You know, and then wondering why everyone's, you know, miserable in their relationship because they're comparing it to something fake. It's like comparing your body to a photoshopped body. You know,
other than social media, do you think there's something else in our society that made marriage more difficult to stay together?
Now makes it more difficult?
And just like your parents stayed married?
Yeah, my parents stayed married until my mother passed away.
Same with me.
But they were mixed results. I think that my parents were not as caught up in their own happiness. I think we're very caught up in our own happiness.
We're all very
Yeah, we're all very sort of, I don't want to say narcissistic.
So interesting. Interesting framing. I understand what he's saying. You kind of just endured back then. But it's an interesting framing to say you're not caught up in your own happiness. Because I think happiness is a somewhat modern concept. Like, it's always existed. But it's a modern concept to be like a part of your life in a more powerful way. And it's a positive thing. You should want to be happy because if you desire to be happy, generally you can be happier better. Right? I'm in a relationship with my wife. I want to be happy, which means that when I'm not happy, I'm going to express it. And hopefully I do that in a healthy way. And then hopefully she'll be empathetic to that. And then hopefully she'll express herself when she's unhappy. And it makes us happier. You can make a relationship happy by just wanting to be happy and having healthy boundaries set up and whatnot. You know, but then at the same time, like we were saying before, do some people focus too much on happiness, or, you know, how far does it go? It can get very complicated. You know, you have to figure out what you can compromise with and what you can't compromise with. And I think that raising people to focus too much on happiness, or rather not to be able to get through the hard times, that's your problem. You know, you have to be able to get through the hard times. That's a necessity.
But we're very much like, we are the sun around which everything revolves.
What am I not getting?
Yeah, my father was a Vietnam veteran. You know, he got out of the Naval Academy in '66 and went to Vietnam for 3 years. So he was alive. So he was like, fuck, I'm ahead. I'm playing with the house's money. I'm alive. Everybody in their wedding party had died. All the men in their wedding party died in Vietnam. There's 5 guys in their wedding party, and they all died in Vietnam. My parents never looked at their wedding album because every single man in it was dead. They were all helicopter pilots in Vietnam who got killed in their 20s. You know, so they didn't really see marriage as like it was a partnership. It was like, yeah, we're going to do this thing. We're going to have kids. We're going to raise the kids. We're going to, you know, we're going to have a house. You know, we're going to have a car. Like, we'll be successful. The lights are on. My father was dirt poor. He came from like Appalachian part of Virginia, a small town called Shawsville.
Yeah, and this is another part of the equation, I think, is that like people generally are living happier lives nowadays. And so there's no struggle to go through. You know, I just said for my wife and I, we went through a pretty rough thing when we first started dating. It was pretty brutal. It wasn't great. And we were able to get through it. And I'd constantly look back and go like, wow, I'm so much happier. And maybe if we didn't have that experience together, maybe we wouldn't be so happy. I don't know. You know, but there's so many different things. Like, if you can overcome an adversity in some capacity, you'll be very happy. If you don't have any adversity in your life, there's nothing to overcome. How are you going to do that? It's like when somebody's rich, you have a rich guy, and then he's like dating a girl. Like, you guys don't really get to know each other. You're just spending money on this person. How do you get to know them? How do you struggle with them? How do you know what I mean? Where's your common ground? Other than you like to spend money. I feel like that's a big part of it too.
Didn't have indoor plumbing until he left for the Naval Academy. And he just, I think he saw marriage as, yeah, it's what you do. You know, he met my mom on Fleet Week. She was a nurse in the city.
Fleet Week.
And he was, you know, on Fleet Week, and he had his uniform on, and he was in a bar, and he was drunk. And he went to her, and he said, "You're the most beautiful woman I've ever seen, and I'm going to marry you," because he was drunk. And she said, "Are you in the military?" Because he was wearing a uniform. And he said, "Yep." And she said, "What country?" And he said, "Whatever country you're from." And he invited her to visit him at the Naval Academy a couple of weeks later, and she came. But he'd invited 3 other women. He just didn't know if any of them would come. So he'd invited all of them. So my mom got there, and she saw these other women, and she said, "Either I'm leaving or they're all leaving." And he was like, "I kind of like her." So he made them all leave. And they were married 50 plus years. But
yeah, some hell of a riz, huh?
You know, their marriage had challenges. You know, he was an alcoholic. He's been in recovery for maybe 7, 8 years since she passed. But and he's remarried. But he remarried within a year of my mom dying. Like, he was the kind of, he's of a generation of men that he needed someone to take care of him. You know, my mom died. He didn't even know.
That's a good point too. Holy shit! I didn't even think about that. Yeah, for sure. There are men and women, you know, traditional role-wise, need somebody to take care of them in a lot of instances. And if you don't have that other person, maybe you're just looking for that. You know, you're looking for, like, I need somebody to cook and clean and do dishes and this and that other thing. Yeah, there's so many different things that, like, just build up. It's so interesting.
How to scramble an egg. Like, it was, you know, like, after she passed, I had him come to stay with me and my sons. And I was trying to, like, teach him, like, okay, Dad, here's how you make, like, a batch of chili, and then you can eat it all week, you know? And I was like, how's this guy gonna, because they had this very, you know, but that's what he met another older woman, and her husband had died. She needed someone to take care of. He needed someone to take care of him.
But that generation didn't have it as easy as we did.
That's what I'm saying. Like, they were just
grateful.
meeting your basic needs, right?
They were grateful to be alive.
They were grateful to be alive because they'd either been through war.
We're not grateful unless we're driving a Mercedes or a...
And even then we're not grateful because the truth is well, okay, Mercedes, but what's a Mercedes? Who cares? You know how many people have a Mercedes? My secretary has a Mercedes. She leases it. You know, I drive a Jeep. So is she better than me? Is she more successful than me? She works for me. You know, so I don't know that any of it's enough anymore. Like, no matter what watch you have, somebody's got another one or a better one or 5 of them.
And all this comparison that we see.
It's all. And so I just think that's the thing that makes it impossible, right? Like, if you're, our parents' generation was struggling to just make it through, right? To meet your basic needs, to keep a roof over your head, to raise your children. And now where it's very much, are you self-actualized? Are you happy? Do you have 8-pack abs? Like, it wouldn't.
Yeah, which is a good thing though. Like, that's kind of the goal, you know, is to progress as time goes on. I'm sure the generations before our parents struggled even more. The whole idea is to have a society that's better off than the society before it. Just to be very clear. It's just more about, like, how do we deal with these issues? You know, one of the things that come up that become a problem because of it.
Never occurred to my father, did he have an 8-pack? It would never have been something he thought of, you know, it's just not. It just wasn't on his radar, you know, and I don't think my mother would have ever been like, oh, you know, he
I prefer 2-pack.
doesn't have an 8-pack. Like that wouldn't, because again, though, it's not constantly being advertised.
True,
to him,
yeah.
You know, I think that how many women did he interact with in a day? You know, how many women do I interact with in a day, visually or personally in some fashion, or you know, in a curated, mediated way? And again, those are curated women, by the way, so they're photos.
Yeah, and then it's like the women who in your area are usually going to be on like a similar level of attractiveness to you. You know, so on the internet, you're seeing like what would be considered very gorgeous women. Sorry, I should not be eating while I do this, but they're protein chips. Very gorgeous women, very like, traditionally beautiful women. You're like, oh my god, why don't I have that? It just fucking rots your brain out.
Shopped, they're airbrushed, they've got filters on them. So again, you know, how does marriage survive in that setting? It had a hard enough time surviving without all of that. I mean, forget kids.
The divorce rate keeps increasing, right?
Yeah, it keeps going up. It keeps going up. It's been hanging around 53 to 56% for a while. We had a bump after COVID.
What are other countries like?
Countries that have a significant religious narrative have the lowest divorce rates. So the lowest divorce rates are in like, you know, Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, but they don't have a whole lot of choice.
Right, you're not allowed to divorce. You just have your wife killed, you know, so that's, you don't have to divorce.
Yep.
So the countries where there is this very strict religious prohibition against marriage, or against divorce.
But I mean, the United States is probably the highest divorce rate?
We're among the highest, yeah. I don't think we're the high, we might be the highest now. For a while, Germany had a very high divorce rate. France had a pretty high divorce rate. What's interesting is the divorce rate and the marriage satisfaction rates. Those are different. Because most people, the goal is not, can we stay married? The goal is, can we stay happily married? You know, because if somebody said to me like, yeah, I've been married 25 years and I've been fucking miserable for 15 of them, like, I'm not going to envy you. Like, great job, you really hung in there in that awful situation. You know, like that's not impressive to me. You know, I have a cousin who got married and I was chatting with her. She's a younger woman, and her husband just joined the police force. And I said to him, so I was trying to make small talk, and I said, so do you like it? And he's from a family of cops. And he said,
She's gonna be like, no, he's probably abusive because he's part of the police. Listen, it's fucking true, man. They be abusing their wives at higher rates, man.
Nah, not really. But you know, I'm gonna do like the 20 years, and then you get your pension. I thought, I'll just do my 20. That's 20 years. You're 25 years old. That's 25 to 45. Those are fucking incredible years. You'll never get those back. And your approach to life is, yeah, I mean, I don't like it, but I'll just kind of do it, you know? Like, I want to tiptoe through life and arrive safely at death. Like, that seems, you know, but I get that that's what if that's what marriage is, if it's an endurance event, you know, where, no, you've got to stay married, you know? Why? I mean, that's why I think religion.
Well, that's the religious aspect of it.
Have been very quick to, I mean, I always tell people I'm not religious. I was raised very Catholic. But the reality is that you know, I mean, if in fact God talked to humanity with 10 commandments, I think it's hilarious that the only thing he has to say twice is don't fuck people you're not married to. Thou shalt not kill, once, right? Honor the Sabbath, once. Don't covet your neighbor's wife, don't commit adultery. It's the only thing. It's the only thing that got 2 commandments. So like basically, don't kill, honor the Sabbath, don't fuck people you're not married to. Seriously, don't fuck people you're not married to. Like there's no, thou shalt not steal, 1.
It's like God knew. It's like God knew.
You know, it's the only one that got double billing.
Well, religion's a big component.
It's a huge component. But why? Because how else are you going to control people? How else are you going to get people to sign on for this thing and not sleep with each other? I mean, I'm not saying Freud was right, but we do want to sleep with people. We do want to kill people that don't do what we want them to do. Like, we have these animal instincts. We have these impulses. And what do we do with them? Well, we have to live
especially in traffic. You know, it's not my fault. You know what I mean? Cut me off. Fuck you, bitch. You know.
Society. So civilization, it's discontent. We have to suppress certain things.
If marriage was outlawed or just abolished, it would just be a free for all.
I don't know that that's true. I mean, I think people would like us to believe that's true. You know, I don't believe that. Like, I don't believe that if murder wasn't illegal, that I would just go killing people.
Oh, somebody would. So
I rape and murder as many people as I want to, which is none, because I'm not a monster. Like, I rape.
Yeah, sure. I get what you're saying, but you kind of need those laws because some people will do that. It's called road rage. All right. Well thought about it before. Murdering somebody, not raping somebody. I don't know what the fuck that is, but
As many people as I want to. None. because I don't want to. I wouldn't want to do that to another person.
I think society would be probably happier without marriage.
Well, I think we would have a lot less of the damage that comes, right? I think we'd have to find new narratives to structure, to define relationships, right?
Yeah, that's what we're doing now. It's like a slow change. Like, marriage still exists. It's not a bad thing. I enjoy marriage. I generally, like, I would advocate try to find somebody that you love and maybe get married. But that's slowly going away, and that's okay. And society's going to structure itself differently. It's the same thing with religion. Religion is dying, right? And we're figuring out different ways to operate our moral codes. Nothing wrong with that. We shouldn't just get rid of religion. Mostly because very religious people who like don't necessarily have a lot of empathy, I'm not saying all of them won't know how to act without the concept of a God, because they've already learned, like, oh, I'm gonna have eternal salvation or eternal damnation if I don't do the right thing, or if I do, taking that away from them instantaneously will be, oh fuck, they, for a lot of people, it's just a threat of like, eternal life or death that's keeping them going. But like having a slow shift is not a bad thing,
right? I mean, I do think there is a part of us that wants to say, because I as a grown man who's divorced, when you're 20 and you say, oh, that's my girlfriend.
Why'd they shift to this?
Nobody thinks anything of it. When you're 50 and you say, oh, that's my girlfriend, people go, oh, there's a story there. Like, because you're either divorced or commitment phobic, or why do you have a girlfriend when you're 50? Why isn't that your wife? So they know there's a story there.
So your partner. And they think you're gay.
So we'd have to, and I get it. I get it. Because if someone says, oh, that's my boyfriend, it's like, all right, well, that could be for a week. That could have been nothing. That could be like, yeah, it's my boyfriend. My husband, it's like, oh, okay, wait, that's her husband. Like, she's got some authority there. So I get that there's this idea that we want to say, like, it's like when you're a little kid. This is my friend, but this is my best friend. This is my best friend. But like,
this is my best boyfriend. Because Pick Those Go Hard. It's like a rap album.
How many adults still need to say that? Like, how many adults still need to say, oh, my friend Todd and I, and my best friend Tom and I? Like, okay, like, so the extra special friend? Like, what did they deserve? Like, did they get?
It's an interesting point. It's kind of interesting. Yeah. There is an energy to the word that, like, commands something. This is my best friend and my best wife. And that's my worst one. It is interesting. It's like a bragging right. But I mean, I will say that I enjoy it. I enjoy having a wife, and I enjoy saying that's my wife. I take a bit of pride in it, quite a bit of pride in that. So,
health insurance with that? Like, what is the deal with that? So I think that's kind of what marriage has become. Is it's like, well, the person I love. No, but like the person I love. Like, there's a lot of people I love. I wouldn't want to be married to any of them. But there's a lot of people I love, And I love my ex-wife. I wouldn't want to be married to her. I think she loves me. She wouldn't want to be married to me. I don't blame her. I'm a great ex-husband. I'm a terrible husband. I'm a great ex-husband. Because the skill set for an ex-husband is totally different than skill set for a husband. Skill set for a father is completely different than that of a husband. That's the thing I have to tell people.
I appreciate that. I wonder if it seems like he has a good relationship with his wife now that they're not together. And that's something that needs to be normalized, is if you're in a relationship, there should be an option for divorce if things really aren't working out amicably, right? So
all the time. All the time. People say,
that.
well, he's a terrible husband, so he shouldn't have custody of the kids. I'm like, what the fuck? Where's the overlap between being a good husband and being a good father?
There is a little bit, being emotionally attentive and whatnot, but I agree. Excuse me. You don't have to be a good husband to be a good father, Like, you can leave, you and your wife or you and your spouse can break up and leave and whatever, and you could still be available there as a father. Absolutely agree.
Like, being a good father is a whole different skill. You could be a great husband and a shit father, and you could be an amazing father and a terrible husband. Like, there's very little overlap in those skill sets. Maybe good listening skills would be helpful in both, or patience would be good in both, but that's true of almost anything. It's a doctor and a lawyer. Both be good if you had good listening skills. It doesn't mean they're the same profession. So,
is divorce harder on women or men?
Probably women.
That's a great question.
I think that my understanding is the outcomes for men are usually greater. I would say divorce is harder on women, honestly. Usually it happens when you're older. Men are not perceived to lose significant value as they get older, whereas women do tend to have a societal perception of a massive loss of value. Men tend to be the ones that are the breadwinners, so they tend to come out of the relationship a little bit more financially stable. And I understand alimony and whatnot exists, but, for so long, the guy usually is the one that's able to go and adapt his skill set, whereas the woman will usually be the one to stay home and take care of the kids, and they don't really have a skill set other than to be a mother or a housewife, and they don't have that independence, that ability to earn money. They're kind of like almost hopeless sometimes. They might have to get an actual job, and then what? You're 40-something years old working at like a minimum wage job with your 17-year-old coworkers. You know, I would say average generally. If you're a super attractive woman and you get like, if you're better off, of course. You know, if you're a super attractive woman who married a fucking rich guy and you got a bunch of his money, of course you're set. But I think generally speaking, probably women. You know, women are also the ones that generally take care of the kids. They usually generally get custody of the kids. And so now they have that additional responsibility. Even if the husband is active in the life, doesn't mean that they're as active. So there's a lot. I'd say it's harder for women usually.
I think it's equally hard on both, but I think that the world is more sympathetic to women when they get divorced.
Yeah, I disagree with the first part, but I definitely agree with the second part. The world is definitely more sympathetic to women. Absolutely, I agree with that.
I think when a woman gets cheated on, the man's...
And also, by the way, like men are much more likely to get in relationships after they get divorced and whatnot too. They're just easier for them. You know, there's a stigma on a single mother. There's not a stigma on a single father.
Piece of shit. And when they get divorced, I think when a woman gets cheated on, the man's a piece of shit.
True.
And when a woman cheats on a man, she must have been forced into the arms of this other man, or she had to explore.
I don't think that's true. I don't think that people feel that way at all. I think that women who cheat, it's more negative societal perception. I think men tend to cheat more, and if a man cheats, they definitely see it as a big piece of shit. And I think we should talk about this, the things that happen to make that guy cheat, 1000%. Because like he said before, maybe it's because she wouldn't fuck him, and you know, maybe it's because they had a big communication problem, which is probably what happened. And so I could be somewhat empathetic to that, but to say like, but if women cheat, it's like, oh, it's not really. I don't think that there's, and maybe I'm just out of touch, but I don't think that there's like the societal acceptance of like, oh, the woman cheated, it must not have been her fault, kind of a thing, you know, or that's like, oh, he was forced into the arms of another man. I don't know about that. I think people are usually worse on women because it's more expected for a man to cheat. You know, whereas a woman, not so expected. So I think that when it does happen, or if it does happen, I think that that's usually frowned upon at a greater rate.
Or herself, or she was being neglected in some fashion. And so if a man cheats, he's a piece of garbage. And if a man's wife cheats, he mustn't have been meeting her needs.
I don't think
and she had every right in the world.
societal
Like, so the world is very unsympathetic
To men, right?
to men when they get divorced.
But that's been
Maybe.
throughout.
I don't think that's true.
Yeah, that's
right
been
now.
for, I mean, there was a maternal presumption, a legal presumption, what was called the tender years doctrine, which was that if a child was under the age of 7, they were automatically presumed that they would be in the custody of the mother. And men get really beat up still in court. I mean, the law theoretically is gender blind right now, but I don't actually see that, because the law is people. The law is judges, and judges are...
Yeah, I mean, listen, and I could be completely uneducated. A kid probably should go with the parent, with the mother. You know, generally speaking, we know generally... I mean, ideally, they would go with both parents, you know, but you can't do that. But I would say ideally, it would probably the mother. Well, not ideally, but it would probably the mother, because we know that women are usually the ones that stay home and take care of the kids more than anything else. They usually have the lion's share of the role of taking care of the house and the home and the kids. And so naturally, it makes more sense for the woman to get primary custody of the kid, which is a burden in and of itself. It's not necessarily a gift. Oh yeah, you get to take care of your kids, so now you have to get them up and you have to bring them to school and you have to work on top of that. And you have to, you know, I can understand how a man that wants his kid, that would be upsetting. But yeah, I generally feel that way.
Human, and they have all the same biases, and it's just not a moment right now where men are particularly sympathetic characters. You know, I think that, you know, even young men. I mean, if at a school dance they sing Beyonce's "Girls Who Runs the World," like if there was a song called "Men Who Runs the World," men, and it was a positive thing, like you get pilloried for that. So I think that men have a...
Well, yeah, sure. That's because men actually do run the world, and that it's a cope song for women. Let's be real. You know?
Very hard time right now in divorce. They see their children less. They get hit harder financially.
Sure, because they
are the bad guy no matter what. If they cheat, they're the bad guy. If they get cheated on, they were the bad guy because they probably neglected her. There's a presumption that the man is to blame a lot of the time. Now, again, you know, marriage equality has been a thing for a while. So there are, you know, tons of gay couples. So you have 2 men, 2 women divorcing each other. And that hasn't really shook out too much yet in terms of how that plays out. I don't know if it's that gay and lesbian couples are better at it than heterosexual couples, or if it's still they're in the honeymoon period, because, you know, marriage equality hasn't been around that long. But I think men find a less sympathetic world. But in fairness, divorced men have it a little easier, I think. Divorced men meet a young woman, and the woman's like, instant family, just add me. that's great. You know, if he's got kids, it's like, oh, he's got kids. Look at how nurturing he is, and how lovely. And
Yeah, see, interesting. This guy's interesting. Because, like, this is what I was talking about. That's why I think it's easier. I think, like, yeah, maybe there's a worse societal perception. I think his point is, overall, that there's a worse societal perception of men in a divorce emotionally. But it still works out better for men after the fact. And I don't know if I necessarily agree with that. But I can tell you more than anything else of this video is that it's an honest perspective from him. You know? Because that's the one thing about this guy. He's very honest. So I appreciate that.
women, you know, they get divorced, they've got kids. Guys are like, whoop, it's got baggage. I'm not going near that, you know. So
Yep.
I think they
Yeah, other women are more likely to raise another woman's child. So
that men and women have different problems post-divorce.
True.
And the world could be better to both of them. I think that I have some women who you know, I've done their divorce, and whatever guy is with them is going to be very lucky because they're beautiful, they're smart, they're good moms, but they're also, you know, vibrant, exciting women.
Now they're loaded.
And they've got money now. Yeah, they've got money. They don't have as much financial insecurity. Although I have to tell you that, you know, it's the last remaining feminist taboo. I got a lot of women paying alimony these days. I mean, you know, women marry
good. They should pay it if they make more money or whatever. They should pay alimony.
the like handsome musician who's not successful or the artist, you know, like there's a lot of, it hasn't been, you know, there's been a significant effort in our culture in the last decade, if anyone didn't notice, to improve the situation of women. If you have an equally qualified man and an equally qualified woman, the woman's the diversity hire, the man's not. So
Yeah, sure.
I have a lot of women who when they get told like, oh yeah, no, you got to give him half your shit. Or, oh no, you got to pay alimony because he makes 50 grand a year and you make 250. And they're like, you know, they could be the staunchest feminist in the world, and when you tell them they got to pay alimony, they're like, whoa, 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 he's a man. He's got a strong back. He can get out there and work. And then suddenly the whole like gender is a construct and there's no such thing. That goes right out the window when you get told you got to pay alimony. That's like, nope, no. I believe in strict gender
Hey, good. Women should be paying if they make more money. I agree.
roles. Men should pay alimony. Women, even if you earn 10 times, you should not have to pay alimony. I've had very, very staunchly feminist clients who changed their mind about how feminist they were when they got told that they were going to have to pay alimony.
Interesting.
Yeah, but I do have a lot of men who won't take alimony even though they're entitled to it.
But society has obviously deemed this correct, so it's not like they're rejecting it. So good. I guess they never thought about that. That's funny.
Because there's just some feeling of like, yeah, no, I'm not doing that. It's emasculating. Like if she tells people that we know that I took alimony from her, like people will think I'm like,
Oh, yeah, I feel that. But let me just tell you something, dog. I'm taking alimony, pussy. Am I going to die again?
less than a man. So again, it's all gender stuff. It's still out
Jesus
there. It's
Christ.
still part of the zeitgeist. You know, we're still trying to figure it all out.
How many marriages are genuinely happy, you think? How many married couples?
Gosh.
Because I see married couples that have been married, it looks like they've been married a decade or two.
Yeah.
And they're having dinner and they're having the same conversation they had yesterday, the day before, the day before that, and the weeks and months before that. And it just
You know,
looks-
here's
it
what I'll
looks
tell
fake.
you. I know a lot of people, and I think I know one couple that has like a genuinely happy marriage.
What do you think the secret is?
They really like each other. I don't know. Like they're really good to each other. I have to tell you, they make me very uncomfortable. I jokingly, my ex-wife and I jokingly.
True. I think people in my chat find me I make them very uncomfortable too. Because I say inappropriate shit. I really love my wife. I love her a lot. People like in person will hear things, or they'll tell my wife. They don't tell me. They say things like, you guys seem like you guys are like really in love, like you guys love each other a lot. Like that's what they'll say to my wife is like a compliment to her, because like I don't know, and I don't know what it is. It's just like the way I act around my wife. Like I like being with and around my wife. You know, I like to touch her, I like to hug on her, I like to show PDA. You know, it's not like massive things, but it's like an arm around the waist, you know, when we're sitting down, or it's a back rub, and maybe I'll rub her back while we're hanging out, you know, just to keep my hands moving. You know? Maybe I'll finger her under the table. I'm just kidding. I don't do that. It's inappropriate. But it's things like that, yeah.
Say that they were the reason we got divorced, because we've known them since we were in college, and we went to Disney with them, with their kids and our kids when all the kids were little. And we were going to go on a ride with our kids and their kids, and they were going to like, you know, we'll take the kids on the ride and you guys can go. And my friend was like, oh good, we're just going to go walk and hold hands. And they walked away and like holding hands, and we looked at them And we didn't say anything to each other. But like 5 years later when we got divorced, I said, you know, when I saw the two of them together, I thought, I don't feel like that about her.
Damn.
Like, and she said, oh my God, I remember that exact moment. I felt the same way.
That's what a horrible moment to bond over in a divorce. Damn, that's hurts. Because that's me and my wife, you know? And it's like, damn, like, that's got to be one of the most hurtful things. That would destroy me. If my wife ever said something, like I saw the way that those two were holding hands, and I just realized that's not us, and I would cry, I think. That would probably kill me as a person. But what a horrible thing to hear. But imagine both of you feel that way. And you can't, how do you express that? In that moment, it's like, why aren't we like that, you know? That's fucking devastating. That hurts so bad. I would be so hurt. That's such a that's a blow. That's a hammer to the fucking head. It's like a skull cracker right there. Damn. God bless.
So I think they make people uncomfortable. Like when you see someone who's got it right, like this guy just loves her. He loves her. They've been married 25 years, and dude, it's like he's talking about a girl he met yesterday, and she's the same way about him. Like
it's a miracle when that happens.
Yeah, I just think you know, man. I tell people, marriage is like the lottery. You are probably not going to win.
I am.
You know, but if you win, what you win is so good. Like I don't know, maybe buy a ticket. Fuck it. Like, but buy a ticket, get a prenup. Like, do you take all your money and buy lottery tickets? No, but and I don't buy lottery tickets. Like, I don't play the lottery. You're not gonna fucking win. Why? You know?
It's a fucking it's a fucking poor person's tax. That's what the lottery is. It's to manipulate poor people into giving more money to the government. Like, let's be real.
Set the money on fire. It'll be more fun. But if somebody said to me, no, man, you know what? Once a week, I buy $20 worth of lottery tickets. All right, go for it. You know, somebody's got to win. Maybe it'll be you. Like, same thing with marriage. Like, maybe somebody's
That's less than $1,000 a year, brother. What the hell are you doing?
got to win. Like, yeah, I've met hundreds, if not thousands of couples. And I know one that is legitimately happy and like really seem to
yeah, because you're a divorce lawyer. You're obviously meeting people at the worst moments of their marriage.
Feed that happiness by that marriage that they have. And they both as individuals have become the best version of themselves by being, you know what? Like if they won the lottery. So buy the ticket, I guess, you know, but I mean, don't make that your retirement plan. Like, don't go like, well, you know, don't worry, I'm not saving money for my kids' college because, you know, I'm buying lottery tickets. Like, you're an idiot if you're doing that.
Excellent. Jim, thank you so much for sharing your story.
It's a pleasure.
Your thoughts on marriage and love and divorce.
I like this.
Yeah, it is, and I suspect it will continue to be. I don't know that we're going to culturally get any better at it, but the economy's good, we're busy. Economy's bad, we're busy. Like, we're a recession-proof industry, so, you know, it's even COVID didn't slow us down, you know.
Probably sped you up.
Well, people said for better or for worse. They didn't say for lunch, you know. And when you're locked in the house together, that was not great for most marriages. Like there was no. It was not, hey, we should all spend more time together. You know, there was a lot of difficult conversations that came out of that. Barbers and divorce lawyers. When the pandemic ended, the lines were out the door. You know, so whatever the next thing is, you know, we'll still be here.
Yeah, well, at least he's making money
Thank you so
off
much.
it.
You got it, man.
Oh, that was a cool conversation. I like that. It was different. Damn. Sad stuff.